Welcome once again to the Cow Report, and I'm your host Chuck Lee, and this is a beautiful February 19th, 1996, in beautiful semi-downtown Eau Claire. And with me as usual is my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred Stafford. Glad to see you could make it tonight, Fred.
Right. Yes.
Good deal there, Freddie. Glad to see you could make it. Fred Stafford.
Hi.
Okay, Freddie. Well, we got a lot to talk about, I'm sure. Well, you know, since we were on the air last time, we had a local primary here in Eau Claire.
Yes.
And they had a big primary down in Iowa.
Yes, and they had a big one in Louisiana and Alaska too. And Pat Buchanan won the last two, and the second one he came in second.
Came in second, Iowa.
And only 3 points behind Bob Dole.
Well, they really surprised him down there, Freddie.
And they didn't give him much publicity in Iowa.
Well, of course, Fred, you and I were down there live in Iowa last August, I think it was, for the Iowa caucuses, and we had ringside seats, and we knew then that Buchanan was going to come in first or second. You know, Graham waded in there with his millions of dollars and bought some temporary votes, but when push came to shove, we saw that Graham couldn't even come in fourth. Maybe he came in fourth, but it was pretty pathetic showing for him there in Iowa. It was enough to knock him out of the race.
Yes.
So that's one of the so-called conservatives down the tubes.
Right.
Of course, a few people know that he was a Democrat up to just a few years ago, and a fairly liberal one at that. All right, Freddie. Well, you know what we like to do on this show.
What's that?
You know, for years we've had our program, What Happened on This Date in History.
We did?
What's it been now? We've been on this show 20, 25 years?
No,
like that?
no.
All right.
50 years.
Okay, this is our 50th anniversary. All right. February 19th, Fred. 1878. Thomas Edison receives a patent for the phonograph. February 19th, 1878. Who received the patent for the phonograph?
I know it wasn't me.
1870.
Tom Edison.
Thomas Edison, that's right. Thomas Edison, 1878. Boy, we've come a long ways in recording devices and things of that nature since 1878, Fred.
Yes.
They've got some sophisticated stuff now for recording. Of course, you know, this communications thing is big time now, Fred.
Yes.
The telephone companies are getting involved where the television stations used to be, and the television is getting involved where telephone used to be, and the cable companies are getting involved, and it's going to be quite a fight over over who's going to control these waves, Fred, because there's a lot of money involved in communications.
Yes.
He who holds the airwaves and the radio waves and the TV waves and all that holds the power, Fred.
Yes.
Knowledge is power.
Well, I know we had the primary, and you won the race you were in.
Yeah, it was a tough three-way knockdown race there.
Four votes you won.
It was a
not too many people
County
voted.
Board District 17. There was, I think, 88 votes. I got 38. The next guy got 34, and the incumbent got 16, I think it was. So I beat out the incumbent and the other challenger, but that was just a primary, Fred. So we've got another date with the voters on March 19th, and that's the big presidential primary this year too.
Yes, and we had a Republican caucus here for Eau Claire County.
Yeah, I heard rumors you guys had a caucus yesterday. Now what happened out there?
Now,
or Saturday?
They did pass the pro-life resolution, which was one of the first ones that was taken up, and they passed all the resolutions they had before them. I see that Doug Knight, who's the chairman of the 3rd District, came out in favor of Gunderson, Congressman Gunderson, and has pressured him to run. And some of the people in the Republican Party oppose that, and they've asked him to resign.
Well, Fred, we're going to take calls on that tonight. The question is, do you think that Steve Gunderson should run for re-election for Congress in 1996, which is right now? And I guess back in 94, Fred, before the 94 election, Steve Gunderson said that that would be his last hurrah and his last time running, and he was going to hang it up after so many years because he believed in term limits, and it was time to quit and do something else. Well,
he has been pressured to run, and he spoke down at the Grace Lutheran on Sunday, and Doug Knight is leading a fight to get a petition going to draft him, and I know that Colleen Bates was there, a county supervisor, and she was given by Marian Ellickson some of the petitions to circulate and to get him nominated. Mm-hmm. And she said she was glad to see Colleen to give her those petitions.
Well, that's unusual, Fred. Usually the Democrats stick to their own, but Steve is fairly liberal, so he draws from both parties.
Yes.
Okay, Fred, well, we're going to take a call here on line one, and remember, tonight's question is, should Steve Gunderson run for re-election or not? I know his brother now was running, but he pulled out earlier this week. And that just left one serious candidate named Harsdorf from Beldenville.
Yes.
The only serious Republican in the race, but the Democratic side seems to be heating up. They picked up another candidate today.
The fifth one.
A guy named, was it Bakken?
Yes.
From Rice Lake.
Yes.
He sounds like he's got some pretty good credentials. He was a prosecutor in New York City. So on that side of the race, now there's two attorneys in the race, Fred.
And there's another man in the race named Holly, I believe, from right in Halley.
Okay, yeah.
And he's asked Gunderson to run also.
And he's running as a Republican.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take this call, Fred, and see how it goes. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, we lost that one, Fred. They'll probably call back here in a minute. Well, in the meantime, Fred, speaking about political candidates, you know, there was one guy out there we saw down in Iowa last August. His name was Collins, and they weren't giving him the time of day. They wouldn't even let him get into the floor to speak. His name is Charles Collins from Georgia. He was running as a Republican. Well, he has launched an independent bid, Fred. He's pulled out of the Republican Party. The elite, he says here that he encountered numerous roadblocks erected by the elite leaders of the Republican Party, and he's abandoned his GOP presidential race in favor of an independent candidacy. Collins intends to seek ballot access in the same way he proposed to cure America's ills, with a return to the Constitution. What we're attempting to do is gain ballot access in a number of ways, and one of those ways is constitutionally. He noted the Constitution requires only that a candidate be 35 years old and a natural-born American citizen with at least 14 years residency to run. Collins is drafting a letter for all 50 secretaries of state requesting an answer to this novel approach of holding the states to the Constitution. I don't think anyone has ever tried it before. Because he says that the Constitution only requires that you be 35 and a natural-born citizen.
How old is he?
To run. Well, he's 65. So he's going on the contention that to get on the ballot, he meets those qualifications. He's 35 and he's a natural-born citizen with at least 14 years residency. So he's going to write a letter to all 50 secretaries of state demanding that he get on the ballot for that reason.
Well, I know in New York State, Bob Dole is the only candidate that's on the Republican primary.
Well, up there they play pretty tough, Fred. It's hard to even get in the primaries up there.
Yeah, that's right. And Pat Buchanan is fighting to get on.
I guess he's only on in a few precincts. They fought him and kept him out of it. It's not open there, Fred.
I know that. When Rockefeller was alive and running the party there, his henchmen didn't even allow Goldwater to get on the ballot.
Huh. Well, you got to get on the New York ballot, Fred. That's, what, 15% of the delegates.
Yeah, he did get on the ballot. Goldwater got on the Conservative Party. So he didn't get any. He didn't run against Nelson Rockefeller or.
Well, I don't know. We'll see if that caller got back on there. Are you back on there, caller?
Yeah, Chuck.
Okay, go ahead.
I think Phil Gramm would have been a good candidate, but he dropped out.
Yeah. Well, he didn't have much of a personality, though. And in politics, you either got to be good looking, like some people, to get those votes, or you got to have some kind of personality, Fred. He didn't have either.
Who was that now?
Phil Gramm.
Oh.
And, you know, other than him telling everybody how many classes he flunked and what a tough time he had when he was a kid, he didn't really tell anyone what he wanted to do.
Right.
So what's up with you tonight, caller?
Not much.
Yeah. How you like that weather we're having?
Nice.
Yeah. You want to ask Freddie a question here? Mr. Question?
Oh, does he think that Gunderson's going to win this year?
What do you think?
I don't know. I hope he doesn't run. First of all, I know God says in the Bible that no male should lie with another male and no woman should lie with another woman. And he's violating God's rules, which doesn't endear him as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Freddie, he's probably a sinner like most other people.
Yeah, I know what he does. He's weird. Okay.
Okay, caller, I'm going to ask you a question tonight, and if you win, we'll probably have to give you one of these cups or something.
Oh, what's the question?
February 18th, 1861, this president is sworn in as President of the Confederate States of America.
It's probably Abraham Lincoln.
No.
Well, Abraham Lincoln was the President of the United States of America. The Confederate States are the ones that broke away and declared sovereignty over themselves and created their own nation. Called it the Confederate States of America. Their first president and only president was Jefferson Davis.
Oh.
1861 he was sworn in, and 1865 he was hung. So both presidents, Lincoln and Jefferson Davis, both died right after the war.
I knew that one, but I just couldn't think of it.
Well, thanks for calling in tonight. We appreciate it, and continue to watch.
Okay.
And we'll see you Wednesday night at Party Wreck.
Bye.
Okay, Freddie.
What's Party Wreck?
Party Wreck is for people in town to go to, and it's kind of like a party. They have a disc jockey, and it's put on by the city, and it's held down at Parks and Recs every Wednesday night from 6 to 8:30. Okay, Fred. Broadcast tape renews hopes for POW families. A film segment broadcast in mid-January on 2 major networks, purportedly showing American prisoners of war in North Korea, has raised hopes for families convinced that their loved ones are still alive, according to a leading POW activist. The film apparently was made in the early 1980s by the North Korean government for propaganda purposes, according to Bob Dumas, who has sought release of his brother, Corporal Roger Dumas, for more than 2 decades. It apparently was smuggled into South Korea, where it has received extensive coverage, and later to the United States. Dumas of Canterbury, Connecticut, said Defense Department officials claim the film does not show bona fide POWs, but instead shows defectors who crossed the 38th parallel in 1964 while stationed in South Korea, and who may be prosecuted if they ever again set foot on American soil. Dumas said he is convinced the men shown on the collective farm are in fact war-era POWs. Dumas said he has known for years through his contacts and other research that the film existed despite repeated government denials. He said the broadcasts on CNN and ABC confirmed what he has believed all along. The government is denying that the two Caucasians shown are POWs because they want to make the American people believe there were no POWs left behind. That's their story, and they've been sticking to it since 1953.
Well, we know that isn't wholly true. That's a cover-up.
They told the same lies about our boys in Vietnam, and it's been lies, lies, lies all the way down the line, he said. The men shown in the film have not been positively identified. In 1984, he successfully sued in federal court to have his brother's status changed from missing in action and presumed dead to prisoner of war, the only known change in status among those missing in Korea, and obtained a POW medal on his brother's behalf. The case hinged largely on eyewitness testimony from two former POWs who ultimately were released. So these POWs come back and said they saw this guy's brother over there. Dumas said he has recorded conversations with North Korean diplomats in which these officials never directly addressed his brother's location, but related the same thing over and over again. We want a peace treaty with the United States. They are using this missing soldiers for leverage. He noted a formal peace treaty was never signed, only an armistice that essentially declared a ceasefire. Dumas said that while he hopes the broadcast film segment may rekindle interest and spur government action towards resolving the issue, he has his doubts. Dumas said he believes his brother, who would be about 63 now, is alive, along with about 300 other POWs working on collective farms. Although the men may be treated well and some may have in fact begun families and enjoyed other aspects of a normal life, he said, they have no freedom of movement and are closely monitored. That's after 43 years, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Korean War has been over since 53, hasn't it?
No, not 53, 73.
Korean War.
Oh, Korean War. Yeah, you're right. I was thinking of the war in Vietnam.
Well, we've had revelations that World War II POWs were shipped up into Russia and they disappeared. There's been rumors for years that Korean prisoners were shipped into Russia. There's rumors that Korean American prisoners have worked in coal mines and other underground facilities for years in Korea. We're hearing all kinds of stories about POWs in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Laotian refugees, Hmong, that have come to this town, to Eau Claire, have said they've seen Americans over there being held captive 20 years after the war. So Fred, there's just something about this communists wanting to hang on to prisoners 20, 30, 40 years after the fact.
They've always hung on to prisoners.
What can they gain this far down the line, though?
I don't know.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I want to change the subject a little bit here to Steve Gunderson. Do you think he's going to run again, and what should conservatives do about it?
Well, that's our question tonight, is we're asking the callers to tell us what they think on that very subject.
Well, I think he's going to run. I think he thinks, if he thinks he can get away with it, he'll run. But if he thinks he's going to lose, he won't run.
I've heard he's trying to get, what's his name, who's running there to drop out of the race.
Jim Harsdorf?
Yes.
He wants Harsdorf to drop out. Harsdorf said he's not going to drop out.
Yes.
Well, he made a statement in the article in the Leader Telegram tonight. Steve said that he wouldn't want to have a challenger in a primary. So the only way that it sounds like he's leaving the door open is if Harsdorf throws in the towel, and then
somebody else could get in.
Then Gunderson wouldn't have a primary and he could get back in the race. But obviously, it sounds like he doesn't want to go through a primary again. You know, Don Brill beat him up a little bit in the last primary. I guess he doesn't want to go through that again.
Well, Chuck, are you going to run in the Republican primary, or what are you going to do here?
Well, what I've got a little county board race here I've got to win. I'm just looking to that. I'm looking to March 19th. I'm not looking past then.
Well, should conservatives write letters to Jim Harsdorf and encourage him to stay in, or you think he's going to stay in anyway, or?
Well, I think Harsdorf has kind of been in there long enough now. He's burned a few bridges. He's resigned from a few positions. He was on an agriculture committee that Steve appointed him to, or got him appointed to.
Do you think he's committed to running?
Yeah, I think he's pretty much crossed that point now of no return, and he's staying in there. Matt Gunderson was basically just keeping the torch, carrying the torch long enough to get a commitment out of Steve. Evidently he's got it. I think you're going to see Steve run. He probably is going to hate to have to run in a primary against Harsdorf, but if the pressure remains on him and he really wants to run, he'll go ahead and square off with Harsdorf.
Do you think Harsdorf would have the courage to raise the homosexual issue?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't think it's an issue anymore.
You know?
No.
I mean, Gunderson's written this book now, and
I think it was an issue before the '94 race when Steve was still trying to cover it up, and he'd covered it up for close to 20 years. As a politician, he thought that would hurt him. Well, he found out it wasn't that big of a deficit for him to come out of the closet, so he did before the primary, and he...
you don't think that hurt him any?
No, he went on to get another near landslide, 50-some% in the final tally there. So it
was one of his worst performances ever, though.
Yeah, but he's still what, 55% is still a pretty good turnout. And I think as long, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I think as long as Steve Gunderson runs for office, he'll probably get reelected. His machine has been in there for 20 years working.
You don't think if Jim Harsdorf really came at him on the homosexual issue, that wouldn't beat him? You really think people around here are in the mood for having a guy who's, about as pro-homosexual as they come, who's for gay marriage, he's for gays in the military, he's parading around on the front page of the Eau Claire paper with his boyfriend, he's written a book about it? Don't you think people around here are fed up with this and going to demand something else, anything else?
Well, people thought that they were fed up with it in '94, and
yeah, but it's a lot worse now. He's got the book now, and he wrote a letter to Bob Dole chastising Dole for snubbing the log cabin Republicans, and he's really taken a very militant stand.
And
I know he's going after Pat Buchanan big time too right now. He's scared to death that Buchanan might get the Republican nomination, which he very well could if he keeps on this roll. If he keeps the ball rolling here, Buchanan could knock Dole out of it. Could end up being Alexander Buchanan race. But I just don't think it's. I don't think somebody can beat Steve Gunderson on that one issue. You got to have other.
Well, you got that. You got his commitment not to run again.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to break that. That's a total violation of the one promise he made last time. He's been in there for 16 years. He's been on the public payroll forever. He's never done anything but hold public office. This argument that he's so great for the farmers, he isn't. I mean, when he came in there, Eau Claire was the city by which all the subsidies are measured for the dairy industry, and it totally disfavors this area. It still does after 16 years of Steve Gunderson. I mean, he hasn't done anything. The idea that he is some vital congressman, and without him, boy, we really would be sold down the river, there's no evidence of that.
Well, the other thing is the 3rd Congressional District is not the dairy district it was 20 years ago.
Right.
It's become more urbanized, more industrial. You've got the Hudson area that's just growing by leaps and bounds. You've got the Eau Claire area that's going wild now. You got the La Crosse area. You got 3 major urban areas, plus throw in Menominee is another area that's becoming urbanized, and most of your votes now are coming from those 4 areas, and the rural farm vote is not as important. It's important. It's important to those farmers that are just hanging on by the skin of their teeth, but it's not as important to Steve Gunderson anymore.
Well, Fred, what do you think? Do you think Steve Gunderson can get reelected, or do you think a good, strong
Well, I hope
challenge to him, and the primary would beat him.
I hope that he be defeated.
And don't you think people are just fed up with all this pro-homosexual stuff?
Some people are, yes. Some people are. And I hope enough of them will realize what he's trying to do.
I mean, he's just propagandizing the whole thing, trying to sell everybody that this is perfectly normal, and, you know, never mind AIDS killing all these people, and he's just totally misleading everybody about the nature of this behavior.
Right.
Well, their whole movement is that way, though. It's not just Steve Gunderson.
Right, but he's becoming the leader of it around here. I mean,
Right.
he's you know, here he is a congressman, and he's using that position, you know, a public position provided and paid for by the government, to advocate this behavior.
That's true. And in addition to that, Newt Gingrich has commended him for his leadership in the Republican Party.
Well, see, we always wondered why Newt was so favorable to Steve, and then we found out that Newt's half-sister is a radical homosexual. And so that kind of answered that question of why Newt was so favorable towards what Steve was up to. And that was kind of answered by itself right after the last election. But it's going to be interesting, but I think Steve is probably going to cross over that line. He's going to run. Either they're going to put some heavy pressure on Harsdorf and he's going to knuckle under, because Harsdorf is a Gunderson protege. Harsdorf has kind of been under Gunderson's wing for the last, probably 15 years. I think Harsdorf, either him or his wife, even worked for Steve in their district office at one time, and they worked hand in hand for years. So you could very well see Harsdorf have a change of heart here all of a sudden and pull out of the race.
Don Brill could run now.
Where is that Brill at? Is he still politically active?
I had a call from him today.
Well, if Brill's going to run, he better get himself in gear. He better get his shoes polished, get out there and start running.
All I know is, you know, another term of Steve Gunderson would just be a total disaster, and I think we gotta make sure somebody's in there in the primary to beat him.
Right.
The people of this district need to be educated as to the real nature of this behavior. They don't, the Eau Claire paper, it doesn't present it as this corrupt behavior that's spreading all of these terrible health problems, and they just present it as something perfectly normal, and there's nothing wrong with it, and we should be more tolerant of it, and it's a total propagandizing of this very disastrous behavior.
It's true.
Well,
And they're using Gunderson to sell it.
Well, it's a death style, there's no doubt about it, and the government of the United States has no business pushing a death style. It's just like the government skimming taxes off cigarettes and alcohol, and people are dying by the hundreds of thousands in those two areas, but the government shouldn't be involved in that kind of a situation. But hopefully somebody will come forward. There are, like I say, there's several candidates came forward on the Democratic side. So even if Steve gets through a primary or Harsdorf throws in the towel and there is no primary, Steve might not have that easy of a go-around this time. There's a state's attorney from La Crosse named Kind that's running, and there's the president of a Votech college down there running, and now this prosecutor from New York that's moved back to this area, a local sports hero. It's interesting because this Kind was a football hero down in La Crosse, and then he went on to be an attorney, and now he's a prosecutor in La Crosse. So he's going to carry a big hunk of votes in the La Crosse area in the primary on the Democratic side. And then you got another sports hero from the Eau Claire, Rice Lake area, who's also an attorney and a prosecutor. He's come back to this area. So you got two local sports figures that are going to pull votes, and they're both their own areas. And so it's going to be an interesting primary on the Democratic side, but the Democrats are talking like they're going to have a good candidate no matter who wins that primary this time around, and that Steve's going to have his hands full if he does run to beat the Democratic winner.
All right, well, let's see what happens.
But I'll tell you, I don't think you're going to... Harsdorf is a serious candidate right now because he thought Gunderson was going to run. He got a promise from Gunderson that he wouldn't run. But now here they're having second thoughts. I'm sure Harsdorf is just really livid about this. I'm sure he's upset. But you could very well see him throw in the towel for the so-called Republican harmony to get Steve back in. Okay, Freddie, what do you got there tonight?
I see here, and from the Wanderer, Buchanan proves that social conservatives still resonates. And after the win in Alaska and in Louisiana, as well as near win in Iowa.
Huh. Well, here's one for your pipe to smoke, Fred. In 1994, the IRS admitted the number of non-filers, that's folks who don't file their 1040 income tax return, is about 10 million people. Others believe the real number of non-filers is probably between 20 and 30 million. But whatever the number, it is growing at an average rate of 1.5 million per year as more Americans simply just say no to the income tax. The IRS also admits that it files about 3,000 criminal charges per year nationwide. Therefore, at current criminal prosecution rates, it will take the IRS about 500 years to prosecute everyone who stopped filing just last year, and at least 3,000 years to prosecute the entire backlog of at least 10 million non-filers. That comes from a magazine called The Anti-Shyster by a woman named Lana Marcuson. So Fred, you can see why Forbes had this great big meteoric rise in popularity. He was talking about all this flat tax and everything. Everyone got excited. But when they started looking at his particulars there about what he meant by flat tax, the balloon burst and he kind of lost all his support. Now he's sputtering around 9 or 10% support. So there is some trouble there with the IRS and the taxing situation, Fred, and that's going to be an important part of the the voting this year. People are voting. They want something done about the IRS and about taxes and income tax to make it more to make it fairer. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, Chuck. Evening. I got a little question for you here, if you don't mind if I change the subject. I got a question about the U.S. Government going default March 1st. Now, what do you know about that? I heard that they're going default and there won't be any more anything basically running. You know anything about that, or what you've heard? What have you heard?
Well, the Congress they were fighting with the president over the budget. They were talking about how if that the government could go bankrupt and have to default on their bonds that they've got loaned out. I mean, people have loaned them money against bonds.
Oh yeah.
And so that could be what this is about.
Okay, so basically, you're saying that means there'll be no more laws or anything like that, no more government regulations, right?
No, it'd just basically be the government would be, in a sense, declaring bankruptcy that they can't pay off their debts.
Yeah, okay, they can't pay back the interest on what they owe, okay.
Yeah.
I do have another point. The last caller was talking about Steve Gunderson, I believe.
Yeah.
I do believe the point of his homosexual being that, it's not right that they're publicizing that in the paper and making it some, more or less glorified in their version of what they call happiness between two people. Because, if you look at it right, back in the 60s or in 70s, you never heard any of this. If you heard about it, the person wouldn't even run, And if they did, they kept it themselves, you know what I mean?
Right.
And, I got a question for you, Fred.
Yes.
Okay, what do you think about all this, U.S. government, how many of those politicians, are homosexual like Steve Gunderson, do you think? It seems like you're surrounded by him. You don't know what to do.
I've heard there's 30 and possibly 40 homosexuals in Congress.
That's, not being biased here, but the thing of it is, they're making it okay for everyone, and everybody's going to be, all the diseases go around,
Well, it's over. The thing is, has always been, the numbers have always been inflated.
Yeah, okay.
Even in the homosexual capital of the world, San Francisco, the numbers are only like 15, 20%. That's with homosexuals from the whole world flooding in there.
Okay.
So you can take 95% of Wisconsin. There's no homosexuals in it, but you can take Milwaukee, and a lot of the homosexuals have migrated to that area. Same with Eau Claire, because it's an urban area. So you're going to have a higher incidence of that deviant behavior in an urban area than you're going to have in a rural area.
Now, you still running, aren't you? Or
I'm right now in a county board race.
okay. When's the election day for that?
Let's see, Fred, when is that?
19th, no?
Yeah, March 19th.
March 19th. Oh, a month from today, huh?
Yeah, a month from
Right.
today. Actually,
Okay, yeah, you'll be on the ballot and everything like that then. Okay.
that'll just be you got to live in the 17th county board district, though.
Okay. Where does that qualify as? What area?
That's kind of southwest of Claremont, west of Stein Boulevard.
Kind of by the Eau Claire Shopko, right? Kind of there.
Yeah, down south of Shopko, south and west of Shopko, Shawtown area.
Okay, yeah. So I could I qualify for that. Okay.
Yeah, all you got to do is go down and just walk in. It's either the two voting places are Bethesda, which is a church,
Okay.
and the other voting place is the Chippewa Valley Technical College.
I'll probably stop by there. Yeah. I got one more question for you. Now, with that Flavin' Pop, I've been watching your show for so many years. I've always wondered, what is the Flavin' Pop? Is it really good for you, or what is the Flavin' Pop?
Well, I'll tell you, we've been selling it now for what, Fred, 20, 25 years?
Yeah.
And Fred goes to a lot of funerals because he used to be on the color guard and stuff.
All
And this is
the
served at-
people who drink it, they're dying.
This is served in all your finer funeral homes around the nation.
How much you charge for a bottle of that?
What is that, about $2.95, Fred?
I don't know.
Think I could place an order for like a dozen of those, or?
But you can go to just about any funeral in the area and you'll see Fred over in the corner with a bottle of this.
Oh, I think I saw him before. Actually, I think I have. At at baseball games, guys, little hot dog stands or whatever. I think I saw Friday he was at the monster truck derby carrying the Flavin' Pop stand. As a matter of fact.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we used to be out there in the Farmore building out there, and we had people flocking out there buying it by the case.
What you charge for a case of that stuff?
I think it was $19.95.
That's not too bad of a deal.
And I heard after we pulled out of there, the common man went out there to buy a case and couldn't find it, and he got real mad and jumped all over Roy Rogers Hoff.
I believe that. Yeah, he probably even wrote that in the Leader Telegram paper.
Yeah, because he
Yeah.
couldn't find his case of it. But there's plenty of it now. So the next time you're at the funeral parlor, just ask the funeral director there, and he'll fix you right out.
All right, what flavor is that by any chance? Like a citrus kind of?
Well, they don't know.
Okay, surprise,
It's a
right?
green flavor.
You guys ever heard the GPX?
Heard what?
The GPX. They're quality stereo.
They're what?
This is a quality stereo. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I was thinking about Steve Gunnarsson one day, and I couldn't resist from breaking my GPX radio because I was listening to some Steve Gunnarsson music. Isn't like a band. They're like Steve Gunnarsson and everything like that. I thought it was pretty good.
Okay, well, I know Fred hangs around Prangy Way looking at the GPX stuff out there, but I guess they're closed now.
Yeah, I guess I was stopping by there. Everything was like 80% off. But I heard they got caught for marking up the prices before they're marking them down again.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an old tactic.
Yeah, because I recognized I was there like a couple weeks before they closed, and I was there a couple days before they closed, but the prices actually went up even though the price reduction went down.
Yep.
That surprised me. I didn't know what to do. Buy something that's cheap, but if you buy it, then you're actually paying more for something you don't need to be.
Well, we want to thank you for calling in tonight there, caller, and we hope you'll call in again. And, of course, Fred, that was a very informed customer there. All right, Fred, I got a question here for you. You
Yes.
probably know this. I don't know if you were living in Wisconsin back in 1950.
No.
February 20th, 1950, this senator speaks to the Senate for almost 6 hours, providing information on 81 State Department employees whom he believes to be communists
Senator Joseph R. McCarthy.
from Minnesota, from Wisconsin.
Yes.
Well, that was 46 years ago, Fred.
That's right. And in Appleton, they have a celebration for his death yearly.
Huh.
And here they something else, and you were talking about this before, maybe. Increased condom production drives up the price of tires. According to December Reuters report publicized by Population Research Institute review, the price of tires rising because Indian rubber farmers are settling. There are more removals of latex concentrates to condom manufacture, thus diverting the supply of tires.
Well, they just ought to just recycle more of the old ones then, Fred. You know, there's landfills just all over the country, just packed full of tires, plus all the big tire dumps. They ought to get into recycling tires in a very serious way, Fred.
Yes.
Get that stuff back into the stream there, and eventually they wouldn't have to use so much of the raw materials. They've got plenty of the rubber already laying around that they could recycle. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi. I don't want to make a lot of chit-chat, but I just want to make a comment. If you really want to ship Gunderson, you got to get rid of his henchmen. You can start with Doug Knight. Thank you.
All right, okay, thank you. Well, you know, Fred, there's some people in the 3rd District that are pretty upset with Doug Knight because he's 3rd District chairman of the Republican Party, Fred.
Yes.
Now, what that means is you're the chairman of all the Republicans in the 3rd District, which is a large district, thousands of Republicans. Now, as chairman, you should be neutral,
Yes.
especially until the primary is over with.
Yes.
Then maybe after the primary, when there's no one else. But see, a primary means that different factions of the Republican Party are going to put up their person to run in the primary. The best man or woman wins the primary. Then's the time for all those chairmen and county board chairmen and stuff to jump on the bandwagon and support that person. But up to the point of the primary, the chairman has to remain neutral to maintain his credibility.
That's quite true.
So,
I see here in the Wanderers another article here says against all odds is talking about Pat Buchanan can win.
now is the Wanderer? Is that just is that the Pat Buchanan
paper?
Is that the Pat Buchanan magazine or what?
No, it's not.
Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
All right. How are you tonight?
Pretty good. How are your cows doing?
Real fine.
That's good.
That's a fine.
What's the older guy's name?
Fred.
This guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Fred.
Hey, Fred, you got to lay off whatever you're on, man. You're looking pretty, I don't know.
What do
Yeah.
you think he meant by that?
I don't know.
Okay, Freddie, here's one for you. Dog shoots man in tussle over bird. A spaniel named Rusty stepped on the trigger of a shotgun during a recent hunting trip near Inez, Kentucky, wounding a man in both legs. Rusty had just retrieved a downed bird when his owner, John Phillips, tried to wrest their bird away. Rusty stepped on a shotgun trigger and blasted Philip Smith in both legs, landing Smith in the hospital where he was listed in satisfactory condition.
Yes.
It's not funny that the guy got shot, Martin County Sheriff Darrell Young told the Associated Press, but it's kind of funny how he got shot. Young said he doubted that criminal charges would be filed against Rusty, who had no prior record. So the dog's going to get off scot-free, Fred.
Yes. In this article I was just looking at there, Lamar Alexander's 3rd place showing, the media has been playing that up more than they played up Pat Buchanan's 2nd place finish.
You know, Fred, you watch the TV news, and those liberal reporters that have you believe that the Christian Coalition and the conservatives were all just jumping all over Graham and just were in love with him and with Alexander and them. But then on election night, you find out that they're not. They're for Buchanan, they're for Alan Keyes, and Buchanan comes in first or second. So I think the media is deliberately trying to mislead people into voting for a more liberal candidate.
In Iowa, they didn't give him much publicity at all before the primary there.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is true.
Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hey guys, I have a question for you here. Steve Forbes, what do you think of him?
Well, his father was quite the character.
That's true, but I was reading some magazine, and he has this little article in there, you know. You've seen that magazine before, haven't you? He has, I don't know the name offhand right now, but he has this article in there, and, you know, I've seen some headlines, like Why I Hate America and stuff like this, and this guy is actually seriously running for president, and people are giving the votes, but he's not supporting his ideas in his magazine, it doesn't seem like. You know, he's more show for just to get these votes. I think it's just one big power struggle with him here. What do you think?
Well, people that tend to have a lot of money that they can throw around are kind of ego trippers anyway. And look at Ross Perot.
That's true, yeah.
He spent $70 million of his own money to get 19% of the vote.
But, you know, he had the money to spend, but Bill, you know.
But yeah, so he's using his own money to make himself look good, trying to convince people, the viewers out there in communication land, what a great guy he is.
That's true.
But it's all his own creation.
More or less it's just a basic marketing thing for him to promote himself.
He's selling himself.
Yeah.
Whether you or I believe it or not, he's convincing enough people with his millions. Well, that's what Forbes is doing.
Exactly, yeah.
Forbes, you've seen where he had his rise in the polls, but now he's just fluttering into nothing. He's not going to be any major contender in this thing.
I hope not.
He's going to get 7, 8, 9% of the vote all the way down the line, even if he stays in much more than another month.
Yep, because, you know, that flat tax thing he's, you know, coming up with and everything like that, you know, more or less it's just, you know, give more money to the rich and everything like that, you know. Everybody else, you know, you can just tell he just wants to keep his money. It's the reason he's running. If he gets in there, he can keep the rest of his money and make a little bit on the side, you know.
Steve Forbes is a liberal anyway. He's tried to convince the Republicans that he's a conservative. He never was a conservative. He's very liberal. He's very anti-Christian conservatives, and he's pro-abortion. He's got some very liberal baggage he's carrying around, but he's just kind of hammered away on this flat tax thing.
Exactly.
And then people started looking underneath the covers there to see exactly what he's talking about there, and then they didn't like that.
Yep, that's true. And, like, you know, if I look at it in simplified terms, you know, like somebody may own, you know, maybe an Atari, and the other may own something newer. But if you want the new guy, which is like your liberal there, or if you just want your old Republican or Democrat, you're just going to be better off with the whole thing anyway. You got the same, you know, it's the same idea, but just making it sound good for now. But it's not going to be good. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. See, the only true American that is running for the American worker and the American people and putting America first is Pat Buchanan.
Exactly, that's true.
Bob Dole is an internationalist. He's a compromiser. He's done 40 years of compromising. He's got nothing new to talk about. Lamar Alexander's right. Dole has nothing new to say. He hasn't had anything new to say for years.
Yep.
But he's been around long enough, and he's got a machine that's working very hard for him.
Oh, yeah, you know, he's got the people behind him to support him, you know, the funds.
But Buchanan, that's why there's so many United We Stand people that like Buchanan, because he's against NAFTA, he's for the American worker, he's for the Americans first, he's for getting America back on its feet, getting our American Dream Index up to a level where it used to be, and making sure that all Americans have that 2 cars in their garage, and they have a garage, and they're not sleeping on the streets. He's worried about Americans.
Exactly.
And that's the kind of person that we need in the White House, somebody that's going to protect Americans first, and to hell with the rest of the world until the United States is back on its feet and healthy.
Yep.
And that's why you go to the ghettos, and the blacks are seething mad because all these illegal and legal aliens are flooding in, coming and taking what little bit there was going to the blacks in the way of relief. Now they're having to divide that pie even thinner with all the new waves of immigration that are coming in, Buchanan says, let's cut out that crap until we got America back on its feet. Let's take care of the veterans that are sleeping on the streets now. Let's take care of the blacks in the ghettos. Let's take care of our own and get our own back on their feet before we worry about the rest of the world.
Yeah, it seems like we're making sure Japan and all these other countries are doing all right, except we forget where our country is and where our money is going. And what we're doing is we're giving them our money, and then we're going to borrow it back and give them interest.
Japan's one of the richest countries in the world.
Huh?
Our soldiers are guarding Japan.
Yep, exactly. I know quite a few people are stationed over there. And what's the point? They don't have an army and stuff like that, and we're just spending more money instead of getting our own people, going to support their country in the first place, And our workers, and they're going to be running to Canada or wherever they're going to be, ending up. They're not going to believe in the country anymore, and they're going to lose their whole idea behind it.
So anyway, we got to get control over our own borders. We got to stop the tons of drugs that are coming here, killing our youth.
Yep.
Like I've said for years, you dump all this cocaine on the street corners and the ghettos. Of course, the blacks are going to fight over it because it's the only way they can make money.
Yep.
The drug dealers are know that. So you got to stop that stuff from coming in. We got to get America back on its feet, both physically, mentally, spiritually, and socially, before we worry about any other part of the world. And it's too bad that we might have to look back to ourselves instead of worrying about the rest of the world. But if we don't keep this country strong and healthy, then we're not going to have a country to where we can help anybody else.
Yep, and I was watching this TV show. It's about those ghettos and stuff called LAPD, and you should just see some of the stuff that goes on there right in front of these cops, and they start laughing it off, and then they try playing Big Shot or whatever, and I don't know why they just can't get more cops in there. There's something they can do to stop this kind of stuff, and I don't know why they don't put their foot down and do it,
Yeah, well, we could clean up the TV waves, too, by outlawing any showing at all of any kind of violent act. We don't have to show 50,000 murders a year to little kids.
Yeah. And if people want that, then they should have some kind of a padlock on their TV, because that way the children are not watching and seeing it. If these people want to go out there and see it, let them. But if they want to see it, they're going to pay for it.
I got that V-chip for violence that Clinton's trying to get in. It's one thing that he's doing that's right. Of course, I think Tipper Gore is pushing that more than Clinton is, but that's a chip built in so that you can screen out all the violent stuff. But those producers and the people that own Universal and Columbia and all these big studios and stuff, they know the trash that they're pushing out there to the public.
Yep.
They laugh at Mid-America. They only think that there's two parts of America, the East Coast and the West Coast.
Yep.
And they think everybody else in between can be poisoned night after night just so that they can fill their pockets full of money.
Exactly. All they're wanting is their money from it, and they know it's going to sell.
And so maybe some of them bums need their heads screwed on straight, or maybe they need to be drummed out of the business, or maybe the government just ought to shut them down.
Yeah, even like these video games these days, they got, you hit someone and blood goes flying, or you can, cut their head off or something like that. You just go back to straight old Atari, eat the little pellets of the Pac-Man guy, or, Donkey Kong, just jump over the barrels and go get Donkey Kong because he's the bad guy, you know what I'm saying?
Yep, but it's, there's a lot of violence out there on TV, and a lot of it's just from 6 o'clock on, and it's, those little kids out there watching this stuff day after day, and it's screwing them up.
Yeah. And the thing of it is, too, is they can make the stuff so much worse, but they're afraid to do it right now. But if you kind of watch TV, it seems like every 6 months there's some worse on there. It's just like it's progressing into the stages of where it can't return.
Right. Well, the government owns the government has what's called the FCC, and they're the ones that hand out the licenses. They just pull a few licenses and shut a few of these guys off and say no more until you clean up your act. They'll clean it up real quick.
That's true, but, are they going to step in and do it, or do you think they're just going to say they're going to do it and, not do nothing, because it seems like the government doesn't like to be getting things done too much lately, we're going to clear up the national debt and everything, and, wow, it's almost March 1st here, and,
well, you're into an election year now. A lot of those promises can't be kept now because they're all running for re-election, and so it's that time of year again where politicians start getting amnesia, and they forgot what they promised in the last election because they're worried about getting reelected again.
Or maybe they just have Alzheimer's or something like that, like Reagan did,
Yeah, well, what they need to do is elect Bob Dornan. Not Bob Dornan, but Pat Buchanan.
Yeah, Pat Buchanan.
And put Bob Dornan in as vice president. Those two will clean it up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Dornan's got relatives in the television industry and the movie industry.
Yeah.
One of his relatives was in The Wizard of Oz. But
Yes.
we better take another call here, Fred.
Desmond Tutu and other clerics push for homosexual priests, and there's 300 senior Anglican prelates that are doing this.
Is that in South Africa or all over the country, all over the world?
Mostly in Britain.
Huh. Okay, go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hi.
Hello.
What's up?
Not much.
Where'd you guys get that cow on your desk?
This one? Oh, Roy Rogers Hoff, whose great-great-grandfather was, I think, related to Wayne Newton on John Wayne's side.
Oh, yeah?
He found it somewhere.
What's Fred smoking?
Fred, you used to smoke a long time ago, didn't you?
Yeah, I quit that about 1938.
Did you ever regret it?
What?
Did you ever regret quitting?
No, I wish I had never started.
Fred?
38.
Fred?
Yes?
What kind of cigarettes did you smoke?
I smoked the Cools or something like that. That was my main.
That's what my dad got hooked on when he was a kid.
I couldn't smoke the Old Golds and the
Pall Malls.
Lucky Strikes.
Oh, you know what kind I smoke? Camel Bear Ass.
Okay, Freddie. Now, what'd you have there?
I was talking about Desmond Tutu and other clerics push for homosexual priests.
Now, Desmond Tutu is one of the. He's an Anglican priest, isn't he?
I guess so.
He was one of the major leaders of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa during the 80s and 90s. Helped overthrow the South African government and institute a communist regime there.
Right.
And now he's going around the country and around the world trying to push homosexual priests. What do you think about that, Fred? And would the Catholic Church stand for that?
I don't think so. Here's from...
We better take that caller, Fred, there. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I'd like to change the subject here a little bit. Welfare reform, something we seen in the paper here last weekend.
All right.
My idea of welfare reform is let more of the guys have their kids. We'd have a whole lot less welfare. I strongly believe that because we had a dad's group here quite a while ago here in Eau Claire. And all of these guys that I've met, I was the only one that has my child through divorce. And I see these guys that make such great parents, but the court system doesn't allow them to have their kids.
Well, the courts have always tended to lean towards giving the dependents to the mother. And whether it's right or wrong, that seems to be the way the system is set up in this country. So what you've created is a massive welfare system for mothers and the children. And it almost, in a way, encourages divorce because it makes sure that the mother will have the housing and the welfare and the AFDC and all that already built in. And of course, that welfare system destroyed the black families in this nation, and it's working very hard now to destroy the white families in this nation. And you are right, there are some men that should have possession of their children that don't. Whatever happened to that men's group?
I haven't been able to keep in contact with it because I build highways and I'm gone a lot and stuff. But as far as I know, it was still going the last that I had heard.
Uh-huh.
And, as far as what they want to do here, there's a woman here in Eau Claire that I know they put her through all the job program. They gave her a job. She worked 1 week and a half, quit the job because she couldn't go out to the bars at night anymore. and to give her back all of her welfare.
Well, hopefully, sorry we're out of time, caller, and we appreciate you calling, and call in again next time. Hopefully, Fred, they'll straighten out that welfare system when Buchanan gets in presidency.
Yes.
I want to thank you for tuning in again tonight, and I've been your host, Chuck Lee, and my rusty, trusty sidekick, Fred Stafford. We'll see you again right here on the Cow Report,
Right.
2 weeks from tonight.
And
Adios.
we're going to be on the 21st. That's